Welcome, everyone. I'm excited to welcome you to today's session. Today, we're diving into the fascinating world of economics with our focus on what drives nations to prosperity. We'll explore how we can measure, sustain, and even accelerate economic growth. This is Module 3, Understanding Economic Growth. Over the course of this presentation, we'll cover the key drivers behind economic success, how to evaluate progress, and strategies for fostering sustainable growth. I'm glad you're here, and I look forward to an engaging and insightful discussion with all of you. When we talk about real GDP, we're really trying to get a clear picture of how much an economy is actually producing, without the distortions caused by changing prices. So, real GDP strips out those price effects, giving us a true measure of output growth over time. We measure this growth using the real GDP growth rate, which tells us the percentage change in inflation-adjusted GDP from one period to the next. Essentially, it shows us how much more goods and services are being produced, adjusted for inflation. Now, economic growth is fundamentally about increasing the production of goods and services in an economy over time. This growth reflects a rising capacity to meet human needs and wants, meaning, as the economy grows, it can produce more to satisfy what people desire. So when we ask, what is economic growth? We're really asking how an economy's ability to produce increases, leading to higher standards of living and more opportunities for everyone. And that's what makes understanding these concepts so important. They're the foundation for evaluating a country's overall economic health. Let's talk about the power of the compounding effect. Small annual growth rates might seem insignificant at first, but over decades, they really add up, much like how compound interest works. This gradual growth can lead to dramatic increases in wealth and prosperity over time. A bigger, healthier economy means a larger tax base for governments. With more resources, they can invest more in vital areas like education, infrastructure, and social programs. These investments, in turn, create a cycle of positive impacts. For example, better public services, such as improved schools and roads, benefit everyone. Growth also fuels research and development, or R&D, which drives innovation and boosts efficiency across industries. As the economy expands, more jobs are created, and structural unemployment decreases, giving more people stable employment opportunities. When more people are employed, overall productivity rises, which translates into higher living standards, better housing, healthcare, and an improved quality of life. Even modest but sustained annual growth rates, when compounded over many years, can transform entire economies and the lives of individuals. This is the real power of sustained growth. Small steps taken consistently lead to significant, long-term progress. This is why economists and policymakers focus so much on seemingly small differences in growth rates. You might think that a 1 percentage point difference isn't a big deal, but over time, it can completely reshape a nation's economic destiny. For example, just 2% growth today means that in 50 years, the wealth of that economy could be about 2.7 times what it is now. That's a huge difference. If you have a steady 2% annual growth rate, it almost triples the size of the economy over half a century. But if there's zero growth, that is, no increase at all, then wealth stays stagnant and nothing changes. So why does that 2% matter so much? It's because of what we call the compounding effect. That small annual increase adds up year after year, and over time, those tiny gains really multiply. This visualizes how even a modest growth rate can lead to significant change over generations. Understanding this helps us see why policies that promote steady growth are so crucial for long-term prosperity. Let's take a closer look at how growth compares across the United States and the rest of the world, and what those numbers actually reveal. When we talk about economic growth trends, we're really examining how economies expand over time, and understanding these trends helps us see where opportunities and challenges lie. In the U.S., growth has been relatively steady, but when we compare that to other parts of the world, we see some interesting differences. Some emerging markets are experiencing rapid growth, driven by technological advances, demographic shifts, or investment surges. What's important here is to recognize that these numbers aren't just abstract figures. They tell us about real economic activity, consumer confidence, and potential future developments. By understanding these trends, we can better grasp the broader economic landscape, which is crucial for making informed decisions and strategies. So, as we go through the rest of this presentation, keep in mind how these global growth patterns influence everything from policy making to business opportunities. Let's take a closer look at the recent economic impact of the government shutdown. It actually shaved about 1 percentage point off our growth forecast. So, despite that setback, the revised outlook for Q4 2025 shows a modest 0.7% growth. Now, when we consider the overall picture, the United States remains the largest economy in the world, with a nominal GDP of $31.44 trillion as of the end of 2025. What's really impressive is that we're projected to be the fastest-growing G7 economy for the third year in a row. According to the IMF's 2026 forecast, our growth rate is expected to be around 2.4%, which is quite strong compared to most advanced economies. Even with some headwinds, our full-year growth for 2025 is still projected at 2.1%. All of this underscores the resilience of the U.S. economy. It's functioning like a powerful engine, capable of bouncing back and outperforming many other nations. This resilience is a key theme as we continue to navigate global economic challenges. Let's take a closer look at some of the key challenges and drivers shaping our economic outlook. First, the federal debt continues to grow, which raises important questions about our long-term fiscal sustainability. This is something we need to keep an eye on as it could impact future policy options. At the same time, the labor market is softening. Job creation is slowing down, and we're seeing more uncertainty, especially among mid-wage workers. This signals that the recovery may be facing some headwinds. Inflation remains above the Federal Reserve's 2% target, which means the Fed has less room to maneuver when it comes to monetary policy. It's a critical point because it affects everything from borrowing costs to consumer confidence. Now, looking at some of the key challenges to watch, we have the One Big Beautiful Bill, the 2025 Reconciliation Act. This legislation provided significant budgetary support aimed at fostering economic growth, but it also introduces some uncertainties about fiscal policy moving forward. On the stimulus front, resilient household demand is a major factor. This strength is partly fueled by optimism around the AI sector and the wealth accumulated by top earners. This wealth effect is helping to sustain consumer spending even amid some economic headwinds. Speaking of consumer spending, it has contributed nearly half of the GDP growth in the first half of 2025, which is quite a historic shift in the investment landscape. It shows how vital consumer activity remains to our overall economic health. Finally, looking ahead to the drivers of U.S. growth from 2025 to 2026, AI investment is playing an increasingly important role. It's not just about technological progress. It's becoming a central engine powering our economic expansion. All of these points are interconnected and will be key to understanding where we're headed in the coming months. So, while the U.S. has been making significant strides in AI and related technologies, there's an important vulnerability we need to keep in mind. Our heavy reliance on importing AI hardware and components from abroad actually introduces an external vulnerability. This creates a kind of structural tension because, despite our overall growth and innovation, we remain exposed to global supply chain disruptions or geopolitical issues that could impact our progress. Now, at the same time, the U.S. economy is experiencing what we call a K-shaped recovery. This means that different parts of the economy are moving in very different directions. On one hand, we see wealth accelerating for the affluent, driven by AI investments and rising asset values. On the other hand, many middle and lower-income households are facing persistent inflation and a weakening labor market, which is squeezing their financial stability. This divergence highlights the uneven nature of our recovery and underscores the importance of understanding how technological advancements and economic policies can have very different impacts across various segments of society. It's a reminder that while innovation fuels growth, we must also address vulnerabilities and ensure that the benefits are more broadly shared. In 2023, the U.S. economy showed a modest growth rate of 1.6%. This relatively slow pace actually reflects the delayed effects of the aggressive rate hikes implemented by the Federal Reserve. Essentially, those hikes took some time to fully influence the economy. However, what's encouraging is that we've seen a rebound, which highlights the underlying resilience of the economy. It's a sign that despite the headwinds, the U.S. economy is capable of bouncing back. Looking ahead into 2024, the growth rate has accelerated quite sharply. Starting from around 1.6% early in the year, it's now surpassing 3% by the third quarter. This uptick is largely driven by strong consumer spending. People are still out there spending, and a surge in business investment, especially in technology and AI infrastructure. If we look at the historical context, the chart here shows U.S. GDP growth over time, highlighting just how significant this recent acceleration is compared to previous years. It's a reflection of both resilient consumer confidence and innovation-driven investments fueling the economy's momentum. This trend underscores the importance of adaptability and innovation as key drivers of growth in our current environment. Let's dive into understanding the structural drivers that set the upper limit of sustainable output. Essentially, these are the fundamental factors that determine how much an economy can produce over the long term without causing inflation or other imbalances. When we talk about potential GDP, we're referring to the maximum output an economy can sustain when all resources are fully employed. So, what makes this potential GDP grow? In this chapter, we'll explore the key factors that influence this growth. These include things like increases in the labor force, improvements in productivity, and advancements in technology. Each of these elements plays a crucial role in expanding the capacity of the economy. For example, a growing population or higher participation rates mean more workers are available to produce goods and services. Meanwhile, technological progress makes workers more productive, enabling more output with the same or fewer inputs. Understanding these drivers helps us grasp how economies can develop sustainably over time, and why policies that support education, innovation, and workforce participation are so vital. Overall, by examining these structural factors, we gain insights into the long-term growth potential, which is central to our broader discussion of economic stability and growth. So, one of the key ways an economy can grow sustainably is through better resource allocation. When resources are used more efficiently, we reduce waste and boost overall productivity. This means we get more output from the same inputs, which is a crucial concept called efficiency gains. These gains often come from new ideas and innovative processes that help us do more with what we have. Another important factor is technological progress. When we invest in both physical capital, like machinery and infrastructure, and human capital, like education and skills, we actually increase our capacity to produce goods and services. This growth in capital stock enables the economy to expand its potential output. Then we have labor force growth. As more workers enter the workforce, the economy's productive capacity increases. More workers mean more hands contributing to production, which can raise the overall potential output. Now, all these elements tie into what we call potential GDP, the maximum sustainable output an economy can achieve over the long run without causing inflation to spiral out of control. Think of it as the economy's speed limit, where growth is steady and sustainable. Finally, these are the pillars of potential GDP: efficiency gains, technological progress, capital stock growth, and labor force growth. Together, they form the foundation that supports long-term economic growth and stability. When participation rates rise, such as when more women enter the workforce, potential GDP can actually grow even without an increase in the overall population. This highlights how important labor force participation is to economic growth. Population growth, of course, has traditionally been seen as the natural foundation for a growing workforce. The larger the population, the more people available to work. But it's not just about numbers. Who is participating in the workforce matters a lot. The labor force participation rate is influenced by various factors, including age demographics, gender, and changing social norms. For example, as societal attitudes shift, more women and older workers may choose to stay employed longer, boosting overall participation. Another key factor is immigration policy. By adjusting immigration policies, countries can effectively expand their working-age population, providing a powerful lever to support economic growth when natural population growth slows down. All these elements, the size of the population, participation rates, and immigration, are crucial determinants. The size of the labor force is one of the most fundamental drivers of potential GDP. More workers mean more hands to produce goods and services, which ultimately fuels economic growth. Human capital is incredibly powerful because it grows and appreciates over time. It's not just about having people, it's about the knowledge, skills, and capabilities they bring to the table. These are developed through education, vocational training, on-the-job learning, and even healthcare. When we invest in human capital, we're essentially multiplying the value of physical assets. Speaking of investment, it's crucial that businesses commit resources today, whether that's training, education programs, or health support, so they can see the benefits in increased capacity tomorrow. On the other side, we have physical capital, things like machinery, equipment, factories, infrastructure, and technology hardware. These tangible assets directly enhance what each worker can produce. Think of physical capital as the foundation that supports the workforce. The better and more abundant this capital is, the greater the productive capacity of the entire system. Expanding our capital stock, both human and physical, is essential for sustained growth. The more we invest in these areas, the more productive and competitive we become. This connection between human and physical capital really underscores how they work together to drive overall economic progress. Let's take a closer look at how these two elements come together to create a powerful engine for long-term economic growth. First, we have human capital. That's our educated, skilled workers who know how to deploy, innovate, and make the most of our physical assets. These workers are essential because their knowledge and skills drive productivity and innovation. On the other side, we have physical capital, robots, factories, infrastructure. All of these amplify the output of every worker on the floor, making their efforts more effective and efficient. Together, these two engines form what we call a productive powerhouse. They're the dual foundation that sustains long-run growth. When skilled people leverage advanced physical assets, the combined impact is greater than the sum of its parts. This synergy is key to understanding how economies can thrive over time and continue to improve living standards. So, in essence, human capital and physical capital are the twin engines propelling our economic progress forward. When we talk about innovation, we're referring to new ideas, products, and processes that help improve efficiency across the board. These innovations are the driving force behind economic growth and progress. Right now, we're in the midst of an AI revolution, which is fueling record levels of investment. And early signs suggest that this could lead to significant productivity gains, meaning we're able to do more with the same or even fewer resources. Research and development, or R&D, is really the seed capital for future growth. When companies and governments invest in R&D, they're laying the groundwork for the innovations that will power the economy forward. Technology plays a crucial role here. It enables economies to produce more output from the same inputs, a concept economists call total factor productivity growth. This is essentially about making the most of what we have. All of these elements, new ideas, AI advancements, R&D, and technological progress, are the engine of modern growth. They're what keep our economies moving forward and adapting to new challenges and opportunities. Productivity is really the engine that drives rising living standards. When productivity improves, we can produce more goods and services with the same amount of work, which leads to higher income and better quality of life. Understanding what causes productivity to grow is essential if we want to maintain and build on this prosperity over time. On this slide, we're focusing on the sources of labor productivity growth. It's important to recognize that productivity isn't just about working harder, it's about working smarter. Factors like technological innovation, improvements in skills and education, better management practices, and investments in capital all play a vital role. As we explore these sources, keep in mind that they connect directly to the overall theme of sustainable economic growth. By boosting productivity through these channels, societies can achieve long-term prosperity without necessarily increasing the amount of work people do. So, understanding these drivers helps us see how economies can continue to grow and improve living standards over time. In the long run, productivity really is almost everything, as Paul Krugman famously said. When workers are able to produce more in each hour they work, businesses can afford to pay higher wages without hurting their profits. Over decades, this growth in productivity is what truly sets apart wealthy economies from those that are stagnating. So why does this matter so much? Well, this single metric, labor productivity, is actually the most powerful predictor of long-term growth in wages and living standards. When productivity increases, it means more output per hour of labor, which directly translates to better economic well-being for workers. In essence, understanding and improving labor productivity is key to driving prosperity. It's the foundation upon which rising wages and improved living conditions are built, and it ties directly into the overall theme of economic growth and shared prosperity. Let's take a closer look at the key sources of productivity growth. First, we have human capital improvement. For example, specialized training in CNC machinery operation can dramatically boost both the quality and speed of output. When our workforce is more skilled, educated, and well-trained, they can apply their knowledge more efficiently and adapt more quickly to changes in technology or processes. This highlights how investing in our people can directly enhance productivity. Next, we see technological advances. An example here is how advanced CAD software enables engineers to design structures in hours instead of weeks. Using superior technology allows us to produce more output with the same or even fewer inputs, which raises efficiency at every step of the process. Essentially, technology acts as a force multiplier, making our work more effective. Finally, there's capital deepening. Think about a construction worker with a power drill versus one using a hand tool. The worker with the power drill can complete tasks much faster in the same shift, increasing the amount of capital available per worker. By providing better tools or equipment, gives each employee more and better resources to do their job. This, in turn, boosts overall productivity. So these three sources, human capital, technological advances, and capital deepening, are fundamental drivers of productivity growth. By understanding and investing in these areas, we can significantly enhance our output and competitiveness. Now let's look at what drives higher productivity. First, more output per hour worked is key. It means we're getting more done in the same amount of time. This increase often comes from higher skills and education, which make workers smarter and more capable. Smarter workers can adapt to new challenges and use their knowledge more effectively. Additionally, advanced technology and automation play a huge role. These tools and systems help workers do their jobs faster and more accurately. Better equipment per worker also boosts productivity because when each worker has the right tools, they can perform at their best. Finally, more capital, which includes investments in machinery, infrastructure, and resources, provides the foundation for these improvements. All these factors come together in what's known as the productivity formula, illustrating how combining skills, technology, equipment, and capital leads to increased output. This is a crucial part of understanding how an economy grows and becomes more efficient over time. Now, let's turn our attention to the impact of AI, specifically generative AI and machine learning. These emerging technologies are poised to significantly accelerate the current trend of productivity growth. In fact, they have the potential to trigger the largest productivity boost we've seen since the internet era. If we look at history, each wave of IT investment has unlocked new efficiencies across various sectors: manufacturing, services, finance, and healthcare. These investments in information processing equipment, such as computers, servers, software, and communication technology, have been some of the most consistent drivers of productivity growth in the United States over the past 30 years. This slide emphasizes that investing in information processing equipment is a critical driver of productivity. It highlights how these technological investments continually push the boundaries of what's possible, fueling efficiency and growth. As we move forward, AI is expected to amplify these effects even further, shaping the future of productivity and economic progress. Now, let's explore how economists explain economic growth and consider what levers policymakers can pull to speed it up. On this slide, we see the title, Theories and Policies for Economic Growth, which really captures the core of what we're discussing here. First, understanding the theories of growth helps us grasp the underlying factors that drive a country's prosperity over time. These theories often focus on things like capital accumulation, technological progress, and human capital development. But equally important are the policies policymakers can implement to encourage growth. These include investing in education, infrastructure, fostering innovation, and creating a stable economic environment. Throughout this chapter, our goal is to connect these ideas, understanding the theoretical foundations and how they translate into real-world actions. By pulling the right levers, governments can significantly influence their economic trajectories, making this an essential part of the overall economic story we're telling. This more pessimistic outlook is what led to economics earning the nickname the dismal science back in the 19th century. But despite that, classical economists actually predicted a rather sobering outcome for growth. They argued that as capital accumulates, diminishing returns would kick in. In other words, each additional unit of capital would contribute less and less to output. Eventually, this would lead us to what they called a stationary state, where growth would stop altogether. This idea comes from the work of thinkers like Adam Smith and David Ricardo, who focused on capital accumulation as the main driver of economic growth. They believed that investing in capital, like machinery, tools, or infrastructure, was essential for growth. But their theory also warned us that this process wouldn't continue forever without limits. So the classical view essentially says that growth isn't limitless. Instead, it's governed by these diminishing returns, ultimately leading to a point where the economy stabilizes and stops growing. This perspective is fundamental to understanding the historical roots of growth theory and how it shapes our thinking about long-term economic development. So, as we look at this slide, the key idea here is that returns to investment in things like R&D and education actually lead to higher output per worker, which boosts productivity. When we invest more in research and development, we're fueling the creation of new ideas and inventions, and that, in turn, drives innovation. This is a crucial point because it highlights the importance of policy implications. Governments should actively invest in education, R&D, and infrastructure to keep this innovation engine running. Remember, knowledge and ideas are non-rival, meaning that one person using an idea doesn't prevent others from using it. This is different from physical capital, where more use can diminish returns. The core insight here is that, unlike classical growth theories, endogenous growth theory, like the work of Romer and Lucas, suggests that growth can be sustained indefinitely. That's because the drivers of growth are generated within the economy itself, mainly through these investments in knowledge and human capital. So, in essence, this framework offers a more optimistic view of economic growth, emphasizing that continuous innovation and investment can keep the growth cycle going forever. Reducing trade barriers is a powerful way to expand market access, allowing businesses to reach more customers and compete more effectively. When we open up trade, we also introduce competitive pressure, which pushes companies to innovate and improve. Plus, it helps spread ideas and technology more quickly across borders, fueling overall growth. Having an open trade policy creates a foundation for economic stability. Controlling inflation and managing public debt are crucial because they give businesses the predictable environment they need to invest confidently. Without that stability, long-term investments become riskier. Investing in research and development is another vital component. Public funding and tax incentives encourage innovation, which is ultimately the key to sustained growth. When we support R&D, we're investing in the new ideas and technologies that can transform industries and improve living standards. Enhancing human capital through education, vocational training, and lifelong learning is equally important. A skilled and adaptable workforce is the backbone of a competitive economy. The more we invest in people, the better prepared they are to meet evolving demands. Finally, infrastructure investments, like roads, bridges, ports, and communication networks, are essential. They reduce costs and connect markets more efficiently, unlocking productivity gains across the entire economy. When these elements come together, trade openness, macro stability, innovation support, human capital development, and infrastructure, we create a comprehensive environment that drives sustainable economic growth. Policies that promote innovation, education, and macroeconomic stability are essential for achieving long-term, widely shared prosperity. When we talk about policy as the catalyst, we're emphasizing that good policies can drive sustainable growth and opportunity. Driven by advancements in AI and resilient consumers, the United States is well-positioned to maintain its leadership role globally. However, we also need to address some ongoing challenges, such as inflation, a softening labor market, and the increasing debt levels, which could impede our progress if left unaddressed. Looking ahead, the U.S. outlook is cautiously optimistic. This means we see opportunities for continued growth, but we must remain vigilant and proactive. To sustain this growth, strategic investments are crucial, investments in capital, technology, and our human potential. Growth doesn't happen by accident. It's the result of deliberate efforts and smart policies. Finally, I want to leave you with this key idea. Growth is built. It's not something we stumble upon. It's something we create through consistent, focused action. The path to prosperity involves thoughtful planning and investment, aligning with our overall goal of shared, long-term success.